And the operation of the machine becomes so odious, makes you so sick at heart that you can't take part. You can't even passively take part. And you've got to put your bodies upon the gears and upon the wheels, upon the levers, upon all the apparatus, and you've got to make it stop. And you've got to indicate to the people who run it, to the people who own it, that unless you're free, the machine will be prevented from working at all.
Well, hello and welcome to the only independent news and opinion program where we chronicle two distinct possibilities, either the demise and possible extinction of the Homo sapien or the greatest leap forward in human history. One thing is certain, though, there is no status quo. Hello, this is the Daily Australian Radio Show, episode 70 for Friday, April the 11th, 2025. My name is Jason Olbourne, and I am one half of this arrangement. And I'm going to introduce you right now to, well, she is the boss. Her name, Nicola Charles. Welcome to the show.
Jason, you know that's a lie. You know that you're the boss.
Oh.
It's very complimentary, though. Thank you. I like to think I'm a boss, but apparently I'm not much of a boss. People tell me I'm too nice. I'm too nice. Can you believe that in this world? You know who's not nice, Jason? The supposed Prime Minister of Australia, Anthony Albanese. He said, and I think he was leveling this at us, Jason. He said that there's too much diversity in media. We're diversity in media.
Hang on. Did you just say there's too much diversity in media? This is the DEI, the boss of DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion, except in the media. Is that right?
I can't believe that he doesn't think that someone's going to crop that video or that soundbite and remove the in media part and just have Albo going, yeah, there's too much diversity.
He is kidding himself, this bloke. And to think that he's got a sniff that he's going to get up. He must be reading the sports bet odds and thinking he's got this one in the bag. I'll tell you what, a week is a long time in politics, and there's about 3 weeks to go. We haven't even hit pre-poll yet, so and that goes for 2 weeks. This is really interesting. I've never seen two candidates almost try and lose an election like these two.
Yeah, that's exactly what it looks like. Well, they don't care, do they? And they just roll out all these very close to the election lies. And the lies of, we're going to give you this, we're going to give you that, everything's going to be great, vote for me. And it's as if the last few years haven't, existed. And it's been truly terrible. And I need people to realize, right, we can't just keep having these goldfish memories where we think about, oh, he said really nice things for 14 days. Oh, you know what? You pay me the money he's earning and I'll bloody say nice things for 14 days as well. The rest of the time, he's been a complete prick. I'm sorry, but it's true.
It is true. And we're living through this period where we're, for the last 3 years battling a cost of living crisis. And in the
I'm broke. Is everyone else broke? I'm broke. I used to be on TV and I'm broke. So don't, it's everyone.
Well, it is. And, here we are. We saw in the strike of a pen, Trump got Jim Chalmers to say that interest rates will go down by 0.5%. Jim, for 3 years, you said you were doing something to get the interest rates to go down, and they went down once last month after they went up 13 times in a row. And Trump does one thing and can get you to say it's going to cut by 1/2 and he's the bad guy. This is the problem, isn't it, in politics? I mean, these people will take all the credit when it suits and give all the blame when it doesn't. It was kind of like when I worked as a producer in Home Shopping, and it was the ongoing joke, which was if the show goes really well, it was the presenter, and if the show goes really badly, it was the producer. It's just the way that it is. It's just, it reminds me of the movie Phar Lap, the great Australian film. And when Phar Lap, the racehorse, went over to the United States, I think it was, what was his name? The actor. Anyway, it doesn't matter. They had two headlines prepared, and it said, and he literally says it. He says, "Australian horse triumphs in the United States," or "New Zealand horse fails in America." They were the two headlines they'd prepared. It's the same thing.
Oh my God. I know,
seriously.
because while they're on television, right, complaining about the Trump tariffs, what's actually going to start to happen is it will help Australia economically in the end, and also with possible freedoms, right? Because you haven't heard of any more, proposals of losing freedom of speech and you're all racist, homophobic, and xenophobic, not for the last 14 days, right? So there are going to be benefits from what Trump's doing. And then what they're going to do is they're going to step forward and go, well, that was because of Mr. Anthony Albanese.
Oh, it's just, oh man, it's too much. We're at the stage now. It's embarrassing that we have to endure this in the middle of this election cycle. But on the other side of the planet, things are happening at a rate of knots that you just can't believe. And I'll tell you what, the black pillars, well, they got a kick up the backside yesterday, and we'll get into that when we get into the news. But there's just so much to cover off on. So I don't know. After yesterday, I felt a little bit gloomy. But I think that what we see in the news cycle is that you have moments where you have a bad news day and you have a good news day, and it really is forwards backwards land. But I
Yeah.
feel like that the changes that you will hear from, and of course, all of us on the fringes in this space, and we're only on the fringe until we have a big enough influence base that things change, and you know that it is a building process. So every day we get more and more Substack subscribers, we get more and more views on X, we get more of a response on YouTube. I'm getting people now complaining that there's not enough comments on the YouTube clips that I'm putting up. Now, just to give you an idea of how ridiculous it is, so based on proportion, there's on the YouTube page, it's 7,500 followers, give or take. We don't get more than 20 views per day on the news show on YouTube. So that shows you the level of suppression. It's just not getting out there.
Oh my God, 20?
20 views. Now, I put the same post up on a new Facebook page using an alias because, heaven forbid, I let Zuckerberg know who I was. And we've got, on that page, there's 90 friends, and each video gets about 125 views. So it's got a 120 or 130% take up, so it's better. But on YouTube, we're getting like a 1% take up. So it shows you what's happening here in terms of censorship.
Well, on X, we're getting, just on my X, that we're getting 10 to 20K views. They're suppressing the likes and the shares. Someone said that on the X account yesterday. Or was it the day before? I wrote a line, just a separate tweet from the radio show, because I thought there's no point putting it on the radio show post because that gets suppressed. So I just wrote a separate tweet and I said, hello and thank you to the 4 people who get to see the radio show. Even though the views say 10 to 20K, there's no likes or reposts. And all of the comments were, I always like it. I always share it. I always listen to it. There's something going on. Those numbers underneath the post don't reflect it. But it seems like AI can't alter I'm going a bit blurry there. I do apologize. AI doesn't alter the view numbers. Right. So it's really weird that they don't adjust the view numbers as well. They just adjust the likes and shares. So the listeners were telling us, we like it, we share it, it's being suppressed. And they said, we hazard a guess, there's more people listening to this show than they want you to know about, which is good. Thank you very much.
It is good, and thanks for the comments, which are more detailed every day. And I appreciate the encouragement. Certainly appreciate the black pill, and the invitation is to keep black pilling, guys. And I will keep working on it. And if you're right, you're right, and that's the purpose of what we're doing. We are a news community represented by Nicola and myself here. This is the Daily Australian, and you don't even have to be Australian to be a part of it. But obviously, it's made for all of us.
Well, I'm not Australian. I'm British, but I do consider myself an Australian. Although, Albo doesn't want any diversity in news. He actually said that he wants to go back to the days where people watch the ABC, Channel 7 and Channel 9. So there he named them. And somebody in the crowd, the approved media crowd, said, oh, what about SBS? And he said, oh, well, maybe SBS as well. Threw them a bone. But you're literally, it's like communist China, isn't it? Doesn't the CCP control everything, all the media, everything? So now Albo's doing the same, and he's doing it in the 2 weeks in the run up to an election, Jason. I don't think that's very smart. I think they know, right? Because their algorithms tell them. I think they know that more people are watching freedom and independent media, this is like a community radio show, than are watching the mainstreams, right? Haven't they done research that something like less than 4,000 or 5,000 people watch the ABC News in the evening? Well, that's less than the views that we have for this show on X. Going blurry.
I don't know what the blurry thing is. Maybe this is a sequel to that Deconstructing Harry film that came out some 20 odd years ago. It was a Woody Allen film. We dare not say that name out aloud, but that was a film where there was a personality thing, and then one particular character was blurry for the entire film. It gave me a
That'll be
headache
me.
watching it, but maybe that's what is Deconstructing Nicola. SBS we used to call it Channel O, and then it was Channel 28 or whatever it was. But that came out, I think, about 1982. So there's Albo. What a conservative, progressive he is. That he's only now, what is that, 18 and 24, 43 years later, just acknowledging that SBS is part of the crew of 4 that he wants to be seen
Now
upon.
that's good. By the time I'm 95, Albo will accept me.
No. Because we're independent, it'll be at least 50 years. And I'm sure he'll legislate that along with the crew, along with, well, an inheritance tax. What else could Albo, do for the benefit of all of us? He could ban coal completely. He could ban Donald Trump from being seen on Australian shores. He could do that. What else could he come up with?
Well, no, because he likes him being seen on the news on Australian shores because he's the bad guy. They love to have someone to blame. They love to go on television, right, these politicians, and hold American politicians, if they're on the Republican side, to account. So suddenly they become individuals that want to hold people to account. But they don't want to hold people to account in politics in this country. Now, if you do that, if you're like an Alex Antic, they say that you're far right and a conspiracy theorist if you want to hold people to account. I mean, it's truly shocking, right? The hypocrisy is guiling. This guy, Anthony Albanese, who is not sworn into the Commonwealth as a prime minister, so really it's just some guy in a suit, like he's not relevant to me. I know that for a fact, as a subject of the king in the Commonwealth, albeit a mad king. This guy is going to bring in inheritance tax. So what crazy, insane, numbnut Australian is going to vote for that? So is this all the Centrelink dole bludgers and the retired on government pension people who are going all bitter and twisted? Well, I've got nothing to leave the kids. I don't care. Screw them. Screw the rich people. That is so unfair. Why do we go to work all our lives? Why do we pay mortgages? Why do we struggle? Australians are going hungry so they can keep their houses, selling their cars. Why are we doing all that if at the time of our death, which has now been hastened? By the way, did you see the research coming out about this SV40 and the jabs, Jason? I think Maria Z reported on it absolutely brilliantly, probably the best report she's ever done, that it was deliberately, and this DNA contamination is 60,000 times more than the recommended levels, and there's no accountability. And this stuff is still in every single pharmacy in Australia.
The only reason that somebody who took that could consider that can't be accurate is because the people selling it apparently took it.
They did not.
If we're
There's
going to
no way.
That's right. If we're going to be able to audit people on the basis of their investments, if they're into Parliament, maybe we need to audit their medical records as well.
Yep.
Because, in this court case that Melissa McCann, the doctor from Queensland, was running this huge class action, and Rebecca Barnett gave a great report yesterday on it, that the judges allowed one last chance to get their dots and I's dotted and T's crossed in terms of witness testimony, etc., on these affidavits. The government was actively arguing in that case that they did not have a duty of care for the Australian people. Now, that alone should mean that anyone in government, in public service that claims that should be automatically rounded up, handcuffed and put behind bars until they can explain all of their actions in the last 5 years. That is the most despicable statement that anyone in office could ever come up with. And this was when Pauline Hanson was in the Senate estimates, and she challenged 2 Pfizer officials on the same thing. And they said, oh, no, you had a choice. She said, what choice did you have when you told them that you couldn't work? Well, they said, well, you still got a choice. You just don't work.
Why can't politicians be fired for malfeasance?
They should be. They're supposed to. They're supposed to resign. But the point is, it's a protection racket, and that's the problem that we have today. Is that they hide behind each other, they protect each other, and then they sit there and they use their authority to tell you that you've done wrong based on the whole thing that they control the rules. It's this whole idea of misinformation. There is
Then
no
we
such
question
thing.
the authority. I was sent something yesterday from a Substacker who I then found on X called Fred Paul, and he's a former like real journalist, and he's had to go rogue because he's telling the truth like the rest of us. And he was interviewing this guy who was like running people down in the street. That Nicola woman, that was a funny one. She got out like a rape alarm bleeper thing. She didn't want to be questioned. She had a security guard. But there was an ex-politician, I forget the name, on an airplane, and he said to his wife, "Start recording on your phone." And he said to this guy, "Aren't you concerned, like, about the vaccine injury and the DNA contamination and all the death and the harm and the disability and this, that, and the other?" And this ex-politician, who's only recently stood up from the airplane seat because the seatbelt sign was switched off and said, "Yeah, tell someone who cares."
I know, it was extraordinary. He was the former Premier of South Australia, Stephen Marshall. He'd only been out of office a week.
You're kidding me.
Yeah, that is how bad these people are. Tell someone who cares. So you're telling me that you can commit crimes, but the moment that you resign, you think you've got away scot-free.
Gone.
Yep. So accountability, absolutely. And it's interesting, isn't it, that the e-safety commissioner, Julie Inman Grant, who had these disappearing messages on a WhatsApp account, is under investigation for effectively deleting, official government files.
Yeah, I know, but it smacks of, does she really work for the government if she felt she could do that, right? Because everyone knows you can't. So if she doesn't work for the government, my next question is who you're working for. And depending on who you're working for, depends on whether you have any authority over me. I don't consider you do, Karen. But I'm sure in the background, she's probably the third party that's stopping our radio show from going viral, Jason.
Well, that would be interesting. We'd like to get hold of those documents because we've now heard in US Congress that Mark Zuckerberg over at Facebook was actively working with the Chinese government to suppress Chinese dissidents living in the United States. He was doing anything that China asked him to do, despite denying that before Congress. He actually lied to Congress. Mark Zuckerberg deserves now jail time.
He's a sleeper cell. He's been converted. He's compromised. He's married to a Chinese lady. I don't know. Who knows? He could actually be married to a Chinese spy and not even know it. We all know about Eric Swalwell and Fang Fang, the spy, and their 2-year affair. Like this is how the CCP roll. They could have sent out this, hot, chicky, smart, nice lady, and you win over Zuckerberg because he's got all this power on social media. I mean, I'm not saying that's what's happened, but it's pretty odd that he married a Chinese lady. He's American. He's massively successful because of America. And then he's screwing people over in America. I mean, you can't trust a lot of people on social media. And it's not just, you can't trust politicians, that we know. You can't trust people who run and own social media, that we know. It's too much power to be able to just shut people up. You literally, they put you in a room on your own where you're talking to yourself, right? That's what they do. And also the other day I found out, and I can't name them, and don't scream at me, listeners, I can't name them because I don't want a court case, but I actually found out that there are 2 separate, completely unrelated freedom voices in this space who are beloved by people in the freedom movement, who had 2 separate criminal charges come their way, and they sold their data. They sold the data on their followers, their subscribers, their donors. They sold it to the government, to the cops, to get a better sentence or whatever, to get off their crimes. So it's not just, this accountability. It's not just politicians. It's not just people on the wrong side of it. There are people on supposedly the right side of it who will do anything to save their own skin. That's what's going on. And it's just massively disappointing. Now, I'm not going to name and shame these 2 people. I've always thought they're a bit fast and loose anyway. Like my instincts have told me not to trust these 2 individuals. But if I know about it, other people are going to know about it, and it's going to come out, and it's going to be shocking. And it's just like more shocking news after more shocking news. It's so disappointing, Jason.
This is something that I'm finding really interesting because not just here in Australia, but overseas, and how prolific one is in the citizen journalist, independent journalist, and now professional journalist space. So we're all, as I said, we're all autodidacts, we're all self-taught. But some people are prolific, like, and you're one of these people, Nicola. You put something out every single day, right? And
not anymore. I've got podcasts this weekend. I've been pretty quiet, but yeah, I was pretty successful.
But having said that, in the last 90 days, we've put out, this is our 70th show, so we're doing 5 days a week. So that's pretty prolific in itself, given our base salaries are enormous. So my point is that there are plenty of people that do a lot of work in the space. So that is always rewarded by people who respect that, because it's a lot of work, and people know how little they're contributing, in that space in terms of, paying for whatever it is. Now, what I don't like is the begging part of it, when people beg for donations. It just doesn't, look, if I can't afford to do it, I'm not going to do it, because I can't afford to do it. But at the same time, I want to create a product that's good enough that deserves to be rewarded. And generally in media, it's done by advertising. But we can also be a lot more innovative in the way that we do that, by handpicking really good products that we can represent, and there's ways that you can get a return, etc. And it means that you're not asking for donations, and you're not asking for subscription, because subscription is a big problem, because people just don't have $100 a year to donate to 50 different things that they like to do. Who's got $5,000 a year? Because if you donate to one, you want to donate to another one, and I find that's a problem with Substack. What I would suggest on Substack as a business model is that you pick your top 10 or your top 20, and you donate, I don't know, $200 a year or whatever you can afford, and then that gets distributed evenly amongst your favourites, so that there's some money coming through. There needs to be another way to do that.
Some would be good.
Some would be good, because at the end of the day, it costs money to do what you're doing, not just opportunity costs for your time, but just the equipment, the internet, the expensive microphones. You have to replace things. Things break all the time. Monitors, cameras, etc. I know the camera that we use here.
Your soul breaks.
All of it. And then not only that, but you have your own mental health issues at the end of the day, because
thanks, Jason. Thanks for betraying my trust.
Well, I'm talking about myself here, but what I say is that, if you get trolled enough, it does, some of it permeates the thick skin that we've grown. So you have to take a break from it, and that's again part of it. Now, what I'm saying is that there is a terminal cancer of blackpilling, and I have, go your hardest, because I'm up for the challenge. There is no gains to be made if I don't deal with the black pills, because I know that we're on a pathway. But when you get down to it, and people are trying to tell me, some clown tried to argue with me yesterday that Donald Trump was a globalist. And I go, you cannot be a bigger imbecile if you think that Donald Trump is a globalist at this point, based on the tariffs.
Some people do think that, Jason.
Well, you're wrong, because you've only got to look at the tariffs. The tariffs prove in 1 second that you're wrong, because the tariffs have forced every country to fight for it's literally every country for themselves in the middle of the tariffs.
Except for Australia. We're for everyone else.
Well, ironically, China has come to Australia and want to do a deal, which I think is hysterical. But everyone's forgotten when Scott Morrison wanted to challenge China on COVID. China came out and were really hard on Australia, and then cut all these deals. They stopped buying our stuff. So China, you know what? I don't need to buy any more of your shit that keeps breaking. Every time I walk through that hardware store, every time I walk through that big hardware store and I look at this stuff and I go, I'll be back here in 6 weeks because it's broken. I don't know how many whippersnippers I've had to replace that break within that warranty period. And I just went, oh, come on. So anyway.
I look on the bottom of things now. I turn things over. Even when I'm antiques shopping and junk and vintage, I turn things over. And, if it says made in China, I will avoid. I'll do anything. I'll do Italy. I'll do Japan. I'll do Korea. I'll do Russia, I'll do America, I'll do Germany, France, anywhere, England, I'll do anywhere, but I try and avoid made in China, because I'm trying to stem the flow of China products in case they came from slaves. That's just my bleeding heart. I'm a conservative. I'm not a bleeding heart liberal. I'm a bleeding heart conservative. I'm trying to think, I don't want to contribute. I've got my big clunky Samsung phone. I don't use the iPhones. I certainly, even if I wanted to, I've got an old MacBook, but I couldn't certainly afford to now. I don't know how these kids do it. They walk into that Apple store in all the malls and they come out loaded with boxes, and they've spent like 15 grand. And I'm like, God, in the old days, you could get a car for that. But yeah, I just try not to contribute. But also, you do think in your brain, don't you? It's mass produced and it's probably going to break. And It does, right? So, I mean, on that front, it definitely seems like Trump is a nationalist, and I'm pro all that. Look, I think I'm going to be pro until I'm not, until something comes along that feels like, oh, well, that feels like globalism. But right now, it doesn't feel like globalism. It feels like tariffs to save the world. And you mentioned there during COVID with China, they put tariffs on our wine. Do you remember, on Australian wine? And we couldn't sell our Australian wine in China. So it was all fine then. We don't shit talk China about the tariffs on the wine, just Trump.
What about the time when we sent over our best quality lobster and they left it on the tarmac to heat up in the sun and
Oh my
didn't want
God,
to
I love
receive it?
lobster.
Could you imagine just
That's
doing that? Like
criminal.
the arrogance?
Mm.
We don't need to sell that stuff. And then, you know what? When we've had periods in Australia where our export quality, good quality food, seafood, meat, etc., was rejected for whatever reason, we had this glut on the Australian market, and you're able to pick up a lobster for nothing. You could pick up, export quality Wagyu steak for nothing, and all of a sudden, the Australian people got a good deal for once.
I
So,
love lobster. I can't afford it anymore, but I love it.
this is it. The only place, I know you don't like it, I picked up lobster once at Costco. There was three imported Canadian lobsters,
Were
three
they
of
any
them
good?
for $20, and they had the claws on. They were fantastic.
Mm.
Three for $20 at Costco for a lobster. I mean, they're not
Stop
a lot
making me
smaller.
want lobster. I can't afford it anymore.
Well, the other thing I was going to say was I didn't want you to want Costco either, because that was another problem. But yeah, it's just interesting, isn't it, when deals come up in retail and you least expect them. And that's what I'm saying. In this period of uncertainty, there will be so many wonderful opportunities that you just keep your eyes out open for. But like anything, things manifest. You are what you think about. That is where I'm going with this.
Yeah,
And
that's why I turn things over and look at them. You are what you think about, right? We've got Albo saying now, and Albo and Dan Andrews are very pro-China, obviously.
of course.
He doesn't want diversity in media, but he wants diversity in people culturally, and he wants diversity in products, or maybe not diversity in products. Maybe he wants them all to come from China. It's got to be like the old somebody's getting their pockets lined, right? It's like a backhander. You let all our stuff in, and here's a $1 billion gift. I mean, Anthony Albanese just bought a $4.6 million house on beachfront property, and then spent 100,000, or is it 100 million, of taxpayer money redoing the road that goes up to his house. Just the road that goes up to his house. I mean, if anyone else did, can you imagine if Donald Trump suddenly did that? If while he's president, he was like, so all the roads up to Mar-a-Lago are, they're a bit suspect. They're not good infrastructure, and we're going to spend hundreds of millions of taxpayer dollars fixing the roads up to Mar-a-Lago. We'd never hear the end of it.
Never hear the end of it. Of course, Joh Bjelke-Petersen, the former Queensland Premier, did something similar for his son back in the day, but he could get away with it in a state where he literally owned it for decades, and yet Albo thinks he can do the same thing. This idea, this hubris, this ability to think that they own everything because they're in positions of power, it's extraordinary. But at the same time, when they need to, they walk away. And some of them, when they lose power, it's interesting up here in my seat of Paterson, sitting member Meryl Swanson is all but defeated in this particular seat to the biggest unknown candidate, the Liberal Lawrence Ancliffe, who fails to help ladies when their parcels break in front of him. But it leaves it wide open for the Mayor of Maitland, Philip Penfold, to pull off one of the great upsets as an independent up here in Paterson, and similarly in McMahon. There's a lot of talk of Matt Camanzuli, a friend of this show, who has a big chance down there to pick up McMahon off Chris Bowen. Now, wouldn't it be something? Because Josh Frydenberg was the treasurer who lost his seat down in was it Kooyong was his seat?
All treasurers should be jailed. Stat.
Well, there it is. But it's interesting that someone like Chris Bowen, if he was to lose his seat to Matt Camanzuli, and Meryl Swanson was to be defeated by Philip Penfold, and you get some good independent candidates in the area. Now, make no mistake, I'm no fan of Philip Penfold, but the enemy of my enemy is my friend. And he avoided me in the 2022 campaign when I was running, and he was just the mayor. I don't know why he crossed the street to get away from me. But I had that opportunity to go up to him at the recent council elections and let him know that one of his candidates, who was a deputy principal at the Hunter Trade College, Ken Jordan, I said, he's a good man. You're very lucky to have him on side. And he looked at me and he thanked me and he said, yeah, I know. So, good people in politics are good people. and bad people are bad people. I don't think people get into this.
That's why I'm interviewing my own husband on the podcast this weekend, running for the Senate, and we are also going to speak to Dr. Chris Neal, aren't we? Hopefully next week.
Yeah. So we're going to book Chris for a couple of interviews, actually, one for Daily Australian, one for the other show. So I think that's
these are nice people. My husband is good people. Dr. Chris Neal is good people. And what people will do is they'll do that thing that they never do to these politicians, the bigwigs in the major parties. They'll say, what's your policy? What do you think about the climate? And what do you think about globalization? And what do you think about the economy? And what do you think about health? And what's your view on vaccines and all that stuff? They never say that to the major people. And as soon as a nice guy comes along, they're like, oh, he doesn't know his shit. He's not across climate change. It's going to be extraordinary. This election in Australia is about, are you voting good people or absolutely shit-effed people? Because that's the choice.
It is. And this idea that you have to vote a certain way, like your vote's really going to change the world, is kind of weird. So that you become ultra conservative, be daring, try something different. What's the worst possible thing that could happen? Is you avoid an inheritance tax.
But people don't like change, right? Even if the status quo is bad, so you've got the status quo that it's shit, right? And then you've got change, and change is the unknown, and people don't want that. They want the shit because it's like better the devil you know. Literally, people have said to me, oh, it's better the devil I know. Like, we don't know about the other guys. No, but you do know about these guys, and they've destroyed the country. Like, duh. Come on.
Look, there is nothing quite like an idea whose time has come. And what will that take for certain people to be able to realise that they've been played? I'll never forget that moment that I walked out of the ALP inside a branch meeting when I was asked to support something that I knew was 100% corrupt. The room had about 20, 25 people in it. I was the only one that said anything to this particular member of parliament. Turned around, picked up my backpack and walked straight out the room like Lot in Sodom and Gomorrah. Never turned my head, never heard from anyone there ever again. And the person,
you're trouble. We all know that you're trouble. They don't want you at the ALP.
Well, absolutely. And look, if I wanted to be a member of the ALP today, I couldn't be. They certainly wouldn't be taking middle-aged white men like me in there who have a strong opinion. It just wouldn't happen. So,
you're not diverse enough.
But at that point, I had been a supporter for over 20 years.
Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. You don't help their agenda.
Nothing. But the thing was, I wanted to do it. I wanted to leave, and I love the fact that I did. But that was my point. That's when my whole world opened at that point. I was no longer beholden to a feeling that I had to belong to something just because I had belonged to it. There was nothing making me join there or want to join that. It was just the fact that I felt like I belonged, but I didn't. And that was the time to make the change. So I'm always surprised at people who are low information people that walk in and are particularly offended when you want to hand them a how to vote card for a party that they've never considered before, and they don't want to know. And then they make these, they walk out and they go, oh, that was 2 minutes of my life I'll never get back. I mean, you went and voted, for goodness sake.
Hang on, that's 5 years of our life we can't get back. They just made us suffer through. Never mind the 2 minutes when you're voting. What about the 5 years?
This is it. It just beggars belief. But I know this is ground we've gone over before, and it's just that this funny feeling as you get into an election cycle, and suddenly everyone has an opinion, which everyone's entitled to. The thing is, it's what makes healthy debate, what makes healthy discussion, and what makes us better. But the thing that I've always been offended by is when governments argue or quibble in an election cycle about whose $5 a week promise to you is more likely to be true, and therefore that provides the integrity. And I go, shove your $5 where it fits. We should be talking about $5 million, not $5. We should be talking about Hammersley and the particular iron ore mine that's worth $5.7 trillion that would give each of us 330,000 Australian dollars.
Hang on, why don't we release? Hang on, stop press. Why don't we release everyone's Sestakave trust that has been set up in our name? Apparently it's legal. After our birth, you're born on one day. My husband was born on the 2nd of a month, and on the 17th of the month, a Sestakave trust was set up in his name. That's the straw man. right? And the government then borrows money and does business via that trust based on your lifetime of work. So you were used as secured collateral. Right. And by the letter of the law, if that's in your name, that's your trust. Why am I going blurry? So, I reckon when we always talk about who's paying these politicians and they're corrupt and this, that, and the other. I wonder if these politicians have had their Sestakove trusts handed to them, because there's hundreds of millions, sometimes like over $1 billion in some of these trusts, if you're old the way I am, old and blurry. And I wonder if they've been given their Sestakove trust access, right? So there's a lot of things that could do this, Jason. Yes, you're right about the resources. The resources belong to Australians and they should be given access to the money. I'll move back. Maybe I'm too close.
Well, that's a bit better. That's working. Now,
Dance in the
on
background.
the note of the blurs, while you're sorting out blurring, what I'm going to do, because we're 34 minutes in, I'm going to get onto the news. Now, in today's bulletin, I'm going to play some clips for you as well. So it might be a little longer than normal, but we'll still have plenty of time on the other side to discuss the news of the day. How about we get into it?
Let's do it.
The Reserve Bank Governor, Michelle Bullock, has poured cold water over predictions of a double interest rate cut next month, insisting it's too early to make hard calls on the impact of Donald Trump's tariff chaos. Just 3 days ago, there were predictions homeowners could have their mortgage repayment slashed by $6,000 a year if a global recession is triggered by Trump's trade war chaos, including a double rate cut in May alone. But as the ASX 200 rallied following Trump's decision to pause the reciprocal tariffs, Bullock altered a prepared speech to warn the path ahead was not yet clear. In a speech to the chief executive women in Melbourne on Thursday evening, she said the bank will take into consideration a range of factors. Meanwhile, Anthony Albanese has pined for the good old days of media when there were just 4 TV channels reporting the news, and the newspapers all presented a common ground. Without admitting it, he just admitted that he believes the media works for him and not the people. Take a look.
Look, you go to changes in society. We live in a much more fragmented society than we used to. And it used to be the case that people watched the ABC or Channel 7 or Channel 9 or Channel 10 news, and in more recent times SBS as well. So there was a common set of facts, and they picked up the paper in the morning, a common paper, there was some commonality there, and that was how they got their information. So therefore there was less diversity and less noise and genuine information, a mix of both, but also less misinformation out there.
In an exclusive report by The Guardian, a coalition election win could cause losses of hundreds of jobs at agencies, including scrutinising aged care mistreatment. Modelling, which we know what modelling is, says Peter Dutton's plan to reduce public service may see 26.5% jobs at the Aged Care Quality and Safety Commission disappear. According to the union, note that this is not the eSafety Commission. Dutton has vowed to not replace 41,000 public sector jobs added by Albanese since 2022. Donald Trump has said his ambitions to compete with Australia on coal production after signing executive orders designating the fossil fuel as a mineral and vowing to reinvigorate an industry that is in steep decline. Describing coal as beautiful and clean, the US president signed an order on Tuesday to designate the commodity as a critical mineral to turbocharge its supply by streamlining project approvals and boosting public and private investment. So that tells you that anyone in Australia willing to reinvigorate the coal industry will make this country very, very productive and wealthy. Meanwhile, in the US House has just passed the SAVE Act, requiring proof of citizenship for voter registration and directing states to remove non-citizens from voter rolls. 208 Democrats voted against it. Meanwhile, DNI, TULSI Gabbard, says that her team is working to release additional JFK assassination files. Some files have been hidden with the hopes that no one would ever find them. Some files, she said, have never been scanned. She further announced a major file dump within the next few days on the assassinations of Senator Robert F. Kennedy and the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. are set for release. Take a look at this clip.
In other cases, they have been hidden with the hopes that no one would ever find them. Related to the Senator Kennedy assassination files, the MLK assassination files, unlike the JFK files, these have never been scanned. They've never been digitized. These are pieces of paper, hundreds and thousands of them, that have been sitting in boxes at the National Archives and Records Agency. So we've had over 100 people manually scanning every one of these pages, preparing them to fulfill what President Trump promised the American people: maximum transparency and the release of these files that have never been released publicly before. We're not stopping there. We know that not all of those documents have been turned over to the National Archives Agency, and so we've got teams out there going and searching in warehouses at the FBI, at the CIA, and other places to uncover related documents that for one reason or another were never turned over before. So President Trump is very serious, obviously, about working to achieve that maximum transparency. That transparency will allow us to bring about accountability around the Russia collusion hoax, for example. The more we dig, the more we find the extent of the seriousness and the intent of that whole operation was very consistent with what we found in Stalin's operation. Show me the man and I'll show you the crime. It is disheartening to see these things, but it also provides us the opportunity to tell the American people the truth about what's been going on so that we can make sure we try to bring about an end to it and bring about that accountability.
RFK Jr. says we will know by September what caused the massive autism epidemic in the United States, and we will be able to eliminate those exposures. So for all you black pillars out there, take a look at this one.
We are going at your direction. We are going to know by September. We've launched a massive testing and research effort that's going to involve hundreds of scientists from around the world. By September, we will know what has caused the autism epidemic, and we'll be able to eliminate those exposures.
So big. Think of that. So it was 1 in 10,000 children had autism, and now it's 1 in 31. Not 31,000, 31. That's a horrible statistic, isn't it? And there's got to be something artificial out there that's doing this. So you think you're going to have a pretty good idea, huh?
We will know by September.
There will be no bigger news conference than that. So that's it. If you can come up with that answer where you stop taking something, you stop eating something, or maybe it's a shot, but something's causing it. It can't be from 10,000 to. Can you imagine that, Marco? That's a big number. Thank you very much. You're doing great.
Elon Musk said, I'm excited to announce that we anticipate savings in the financial year of 2026 from reduction of waste and fraud by $150 billion. Some of it is just absurd, like people getting unemployment insurance who haven't been born yet. So some of the massive new Doge discoveries include an initial survey of unemployment insurance claims since 2020 revealed the following. 24,500 people over 115 years old have claimed $59 million in benefits. 28,000 people between 1 and 5 years old have claimed $254 million in benefits, and 9,700 people with birth dates over 15 years into the future have claimed $69 million in benefits. In one case, someone with a birthday in 2154 claimed $41,000. President Trump invited the press into his cabinet meeting, and each secretary was providing an update on the work they are doing at their respective agencies. Meanwhile, Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer is under fire from fellow Democrats after appearing alongside President Trump during a White House signing ceremony, sparking accusations that she was used as a political prop. Just an effing disaster, said one Democrat operative who usually supports Whitmer but spoke anonymously to NBC News. It feels like it removes some of the momentum she had as a politically savvy swing state Democrat. Well, here she is speaking at a press conference praising Trump's tariffs, and another one, big punch to the black pillars yet again.
I understand the motivation behind the tariffs. And I can tell you, here's where President Trump and I do agree. We do need to make more stuff in America. More cars and chips. More steel and ships. We do need fair trade.
Canada has agreed to drop its tariffs tomorrow if President Trump agrees to do the same. Meanwhile, Trump congratulates the House for passing the budget resolution and paving the way for a budget reconciliation bill, 216 to 214, which is likely to include $1.5 trillion in spending cuts, an extension and expansion of President Trump's tax cuts, and a massive deregulation agenda. And Howard Lutnick has come out and said that Trump's plan is if he can save enough money and bring the budget into balance, he will eradicate all income tax for those earning up to, wait for it, $150,000 a year. Meanwhile, Rep. Jasmine Crockett, the Democrat, says, connect the dots. You cannot afford your home groceries thanks to failed immigration policies. What exactly does she mean by that? Meanwhile, AOC, or Democrat Alexandra Ocasio-Cortez, has posted on X that any member of Congress who purchased stock in the past 48 hours should probably disclose now. She says, I'm hearing some interesting chatter on the floor. Disclosure date is May the 15th. We're about to learn some things. It is time to ban insider trading in Congress. Oh, now it is. Well, I find that interesting, Nicola. There is a lot in the news today, and we'll keep talking about it, but that is our news for this Friday.
Oh, so it was okay when it was Nancy Pelosi and all of those patch bills. It's okay for that because they know it's coming. Oh, the stock market crashes, all the rich people buy the stuff. I was stupid. I didn't rush in and buy stuff. I should have. But yeah, it's just, rules for thee, but not for me. It's very tiresome. It's extraordinary. I'm a bit worried about this women in Melbourne thing that happened. I'm a woman in Melbourne. I wasn't invited to that. I'm a little bit, my feelings are hurt. This SAVE Act that you have to be a citizen to vote is interesting because what the Labor regime in Australia have been doing is mass citizenship ceremonies. So it used to be couple of hundred people, and now they're doing them in like a field or a warehouse, and there's like thousands, and it's like, welcome, new voters, right? And we'll give you this and we'll give you that. And that's obviously why, because in Australia they realise they need to be a citizen to be able to vote, which is a bit worrying, right? I don't think, look, I've met some of the new Australians, and they definitely have that migrant mentality if they want to come here to work. But I really don't think they've had the same background checks as someone like myself had to have to get to this country. Are you looking at breaking news there, Jason? I saw you.
What I'm doing is that one of the stories was on Bobby Kennedy and the autism story, which I think is the biggest story in the world. Trump said that it'll be the biggest news conference that you could imagine. And what I've done is I've located a particular comment from Robert Malone, Dr. Robert Malone, that I wanted to share. And so what I've done is I've literally emailed it to myself so I can read it on screen to you. But it is just extraordinary because...
Isn't it sad? I think Kennedy said that it used to be like 1 in 1,000 kids that got autism. Maybe he said 10,000, but he definitely said now it's 1 in 31. And Trump said that's not 3,100, that's 1 in 31 kids. What have we done?
That's right. And so the point was that this week, what happened, that people are getting their knickers in a twist, and I'll name them. Shannon Joy is one of them. Dr. Jane Ruby is another one. These people that
she likes to fight, Dr. Jane Ruby. Girl.
She does, and she attacked me on my page once, which I thought was pretty cool to get engagement. It didn't take long before she backed down, which I thought was interesting because, again, it's perspective, but it's this blackpilling and this sense of urgency. Lionel Nation said it to me the other day. People are saying they're Trump tariffs, they're not working. He said he announced them this morning. What do you? You know what I mean? I said, but hang on. Joe Biden had 4 years of the Inflation Reduction Act that all it did was add to inflation. No one said a word. But Trump announces a tariff. Now, look, where I was going with it, where they were saying that they were all had their knickers in a twist over Bobby Kennedy making this comment about the MMR vaccine the other day. And I want to read to you a couple of paragraphs from Malone's article. He said, "A clever man never has to lie. Consider Bobby's words. The most effective way to prevent the measles is the MMR vaccine." That is a true statement. Never did he advocate for anyone to get it. Never did he say preventing the measles was necessary or even advisable. Never did he suggest it was safe or effective. Never did he allude to downstream harms or vaccine-induced infections being acceptable. He said the MMR vaccine prevents measles infection, nothing more or less. He has to be clever than the liars he is dealing with. He has to wait till he's advanced the ball before he brings in us crazies. The circus can't come in before our entrance. They're not ready for us yet. People aren't trusting RFK Jr. because he didn't go in and fix things in a day. Those people are hobbling the entire medical freedom movement and everything for which we have worked, and I am not unconvinced that this isn't the point. Please stop falling for it. Only a greater fool believes he will succeed where all others have failed. Anyone willing to do that has to be a little bit crazy, and in a good way. If those men didn't periodically exist throughout history, we would not have a country. And we won't have one again if someone like Bobby Kennedy doesn't have a touch of the madness to take that risk for us. Only someone with a touch of madness can right this ship. He's taken us this far. Let's help him carry the ball over the finishing line by trusting and supporting him. The least we can do is stop lighting side fires while he's battling the inferno alone without any water in the reservoir.
Yeah, because again, it's like this insider trading story, right? Rules for thee and not for me. Everyone was absolutely fine with the CDC and the FDA and the TGA in Australia saying that these injections were safe and effective. It was a definitive statement, and their mouthpiece media has since said that any vaccine harms or injuries or adverse reactions or side effects, whatever you want to call them, are rare. But now we're seeing it's not rare, and vaccine harm is not rare. And what he's trying to do, RFK, by telling you that autism used to be 1 in 1,000 and now it's 1 in 31, not 3,100, 31 kids.
1 in 10,000, Nicola.
Okay, 1 in 10,000. And now it's 1 in 31 kids. What do you think he's saying to you?
He's telling you, isn't he?
What's changed? He's telling you, right? He's telling me. That's what I'm getting out of it. I mean, I could be wrong.
But you know what's interesting is that the argument that they use against it and have been using it for years is they say the diagnostic tools are better today and it's a spectrum. But that is a 322-fold increase. That is a 32,000% change. And they're saying it's just our diagnostic tools are better and that everyone wants to be on the spectrum. Now, you can then argue that, maybe that's the case. But because here in Australia, we learned that 1 in 6 children, teenage boys, are on the NDIS, for goodness sake.
Yeah,
now,
and for those overseas, that's disability. They're disabled.
How is that possible that you can have 1 in 6 kids on the NDIS and that not be a national crisis that we're putting 1 in 6 taxation dollars in to sort out?
Well, what a headline is that for our establishment media? 1 in 6 Aussie kids disabled, and then you would just need to write why, what happened, right? But it's not. They're not interested because they know. They already know.
But instead of saying that's the problem, and so, okay, so we live in a culture that says vaccines are the god of medicine. They are the ultimate medicine tool, right? Because it's a vaccine being a prevention. Prevention is better than cure. So,
vast majority of people believe that, but not all people anymore.
Okay, but let's just say we live in a society that puts that as their pinnacle of health, right? That's what they say. Whether you believe it doesn't matter. That's what they say.
Okay.
The same people that peddle that story say that 1 in 6 children are disabled, but they don't want to know how to prevent that. Instead they go, let's put more money into the NDIS to sustain that. That's what I'm getting at. It's a hypocrisy. This is what I'm saying.
They don't want to find out the root cause of anything, and RFK is saying, I will give you the root cause. Correct. But if he comes back and says the root cause is cabbage or carrots, then his stock's going to fall dramatically. But I don't think he's going to do that. I think he's going to, I don't know. I hope he doesn't blame sugar and cereals and stuff like that. It's going to have to be farmer.
You heard Trump in the clip saying it could be a shot. It could be a shot. So we all know, and we know where it's coming from. But at the end of the day, it's set up. And this is the point. This is the hardest part of what we've done. In 2017, I honestly believed that what's his name, WikiLeaks, Julian Assange and the Podesta files, it was all over at that point. I honestly expected John Podesta, Tony Podesta, Hillary, Obama, all of them, I thought they'd all be in handcuffs. I thought this was the greatest story of all time. And here we are. There hasn't been a single arrest. Nothing. Nope. Nothing. There was a softball interview by Megyn Kelly to James Alefantis that we all wanted to throw rocks at our own TV sets. We couldn't believe she asked these pathetic questions. Then we were told that there was no basement in Comet Pizza, and yet there was a Rolling Stone article with James Alefantis that said he canned his tomatoes in the basement at Comet Pizza, but they forgot about that. So they openly lie to you. And then this fellow comes in one day wanting to find out about the basement in Comet Pizza, and he fires one single bullet into the computer inside Comet Pizza, and he's arrested. And it turns out that he was the son of an intelligence agent somewhere in the United States. And this particular computer had just been outed on the chans for someone had hacked into it and shown you how you ordered the other products that Comet Pizza was offering in Pizzagate. So literally he went in there to destroy the computer. So therefore
Destroyed evidence. Oh my
Correct.
God. This is what governments do.
This is how they played the game. Now, here's another one. I just wanted to make another aside. I had a conversation yesterday and it got onto 9/11. And we were talking about the whole Israel story yet again. And it came up. Now, let me ask you this question. If Mossad's fingerprints are on 9/11, and many people think that they are, and that this will lead to Howard Lutnick being a star witness and others, etc., over this thing, how did Mossad get into the World Trade Center and the CIA turn a blind eye if the CIA didn't let them in the first place? That's my question.
Well, I've said for a long time, whether you believe in the controlled demolition theory, and I do, or if you believe in the plane theory, which I don't, it's not architecturally possible. Neither of those things could have occurred, neither without the US government's knowledge.
Correct.
With regards to the planes, jets would have been scrambled, F-16s, right, over every major city. They're always waiting. They're always on go. They're always doing prep for it. And with regard to the controlled demolition stuff, you can't move around that much thermite, which would be required without someone knowing about it. So the US government is culpable. Were they working with Mossad? Probably.
So the question is, what came first in terms of, or who has the more power, CIA or Mossad? Do they work hand in glove?
CIA.
And so it appears to be that case. So when people are trying to point the finger at Mossad being the devil and pure evil and Israel, etc., you really have to ask, because that comment yesterday from Trump in the Oval to Netanyahu saying we already give you $4 billion a year, more than any other country, and people saying that this is all, the tariffs are just a big setup to give more money to Israel, is a nonsense. And so what we're trying to do is dismantle the facts in real time and be able to point to the narratives of their coming. But if we are competing against the mainstream news, we are at least a year ahead of the mainstream news and probably 10 years ahead of them. But realistically, when these announcements happen, so for example, if there were to be any form of arrest, that is when the mainstream news catches up to our news, because it's based on the same thing, right? At that point, that's that capture. So if Bobby Kennedy has said September is when he's going to release information that is going to show the cause of autism, that's when the mainstream catches up. So all of us that have been following this for years, we already feel like we're there, but we don't have the official document yet that points to whether it's MMR or bad water or something else in the food or anything else. So we don't have, we certainly got certain ideas on it. You only have to pick up the vaccine insert off an MMR and it says right there that it may cause, that word we're not allowed to say. So we know it's coming.
I literally think if they had to report on the fact that, say, Hillary Clinton or Bill Gates was arrested or, was being charged, the mainstream media in Australia would report it as benevolent head of global charity unfairly arrested.
Of course.
That kind of headline.
Yes.
Same with Bill Gates.
That's right. By what would be the term for something about by bad something or other administration linked
bad
to
actors,
Mussolini and Adolf and something else. That's right. So they'd come to a point, but then when the charges read it, like the media wasn't particularly friendly with Harvey Weinstein. They weren't particularly friendly with P. Diddy, and so they have to call them. Interestingly, a really interesting case is the case of Kevin Spacey, because when Spacey finally got off,
I could sink a ship with the secrets I know of that guy.
Absolutely. Now, we all know, well, certainly those paying attention, that the three people that came forward in the whistleblowers in the Spacey case all ended up dead before the trial. Three people. So when three people are going to are meant to give evidence in a trial and wind up dead, it's pretty easy to see. Like you've watched enough Godfather and Goodfellas types of movies to work out how that works.
I did not know that. That's because he has a lot of secrets of the rich and powerful.
Yes, but these people were either first-hand witnesses, etc., or victims themselves.
Oh, they're never going to do that. They're never
And you can anyone can Google that. Just look up witnesses dead in Kevin Spacey case, and it will name the three people. It's absolutely shocking. But when he came out and then said, "Oh, look, he's very grateful that he was accepted," we know that Kevin Spacey, for whatever he is, he's a brilliant actor, and he was certainly acting. But then there was those weird clips when he said, "Kill them with kindness" in front of the fireplace. And that was around the time that one of these witnesses died. So, yeah, he is a nasty piece of work, a nasty piece. And yet, and of course, we know from him he was on that trip with Epstein and Bill Clinton and Chris Tucker that went to South Africa that brought back that victim, Juliet Bright, and her videos are out there on X. You can watch them. They've been viewed millions of times. So, look, we are getting to the pointy end of what's going on here. But if Trump, along with Howard Lutnick, whose job it is to work out how to eradicate income tax up to $150,000 in the United States, if he's able to achieve that by the time of the budget next year, and that is well before the midterms, Trump will win the midterms in a landslide. And there was a particular person that got out there yesterday, I think he was a businessman or a pundit, something, and he said by that stage, if that happened, people will be begging for Trump to have an unconstitutional third term in office. That's how much this thing will turn around. So I then so yes, it's pointing in the direction I've been saying all along, but I make the point that if that is the case, that is why he's trying to get people wealthy first, healthy first, before the arrests come, because then there won't be the resistance that there otherwise would have been. Because if he was rounding up people now, they'd say it was all sour grapes. But if he makes everyone wealthy and healthy first and points out what's really going on, and then rounds these people up from Fauci and Gates, etc., the Clintons and whoever else is going to go down the tubes, and there'll be many of them, then it would start to make a whole lot more sense. And then there would be something to unite everyone. But I don't know what it is that's going to be the big unity trigger, but it tends to be that if you're healthy and wealthy, as Bobby Kennedy said, a sick person has one dream, a healthy person has 1,000.
Yeah. I would just say that Kevin Spacey was not exactly playing against type when he played Verbal Kint in the Usual Suspects. And I think it was Robert De Niro who lost his mind like a true lefty and was out on the streets in New York before the election saying that if you vote Trump in, he's the last president, he's going to be a dictator, there'll be no democracy. Now, I'm going to say something extraordinary. If you were going to have a dictator in America, if it was going to mirror the CCP in China, and look, I think the only advantages of dictatorships is that people in power get to finish their plans. Because in our countries with democracy, the reason they find it so frustrating and they want to get rid of it is because it flip-flops left and right. So, you start something, you don't get it done within the 4 years, and then someone else comes in and they just put the brakes on it, like Joe Biden did with the Keystone Pipeline and various other stop fracking on federal land in America and all that. Day one. So you can't really get anything done because the next people come in, and to look useful and relevant, they do the opposite, right? So they stop all your stuff. So our countries have suffered. So the first thing they decided to do was try and own both sides of the argument. And in Australia, it's definitely a uni party. We don't really have left and right. They're still coloured red and blue, and they still pretend not to like each other, but there's plenty of photos of them hanging out, and they're great mates, and they're funded by the same company. But the next stage, after owning two sides of the argument as a uni party, the next stage would be keeping someone in power, right? Making sure that someone can finish the job, therefore potentially advantaging a country the way China is advantaged by because these people are essentially the CEO of countries. Countries have become corporations, right? So if you keep changing CEO, like if you keep changing managers in a business, there's no coherent mission statement, right? It keeps changing. And so, not that I'm advocating dictatorships and the end of democracy, but if that does happen, you're better off with it being Trump than you were with Biden. That's just I mean, I'm going to catch so much hate and shade for saying that, but I'm saying it anyway.
Why? Who's going to hate you for wanting Trump over Biden?
Yeah, the whole dictatorship thing. Look, if you're going to be in a dictatorship, be in a dictatorship with someone who's not going to attempt your mass murder, starvation, ill health, and financial breaking, is my feeling. So, we're getting into dangerous territory politically, globally anyway. So if someone's going to come in and really take the reins and keep the reins, let's hope it's not a murderous psychopath, is my humble opinion.
Well, we'd all love to be anarchists, pure anarchists, which is that no one controls anything and we just run our own race. But we've seen how that works. I love the words of Senator John Kennedy, no relation to Bobby Kennedy, when he said, if you're so against the police, call a crackhead next time you get robbed. And there has to be a level in society at some level until we all live in abundance. And then we don't have the need to commit crimes to be able to survive because we're all surviving and we're thriving. And I think that's the point, that if we're all healthy and we're all wealthy, we don't have to do bad things in order to survive. And that is the breakthrough point. So it is a process. As much as people want to shoot it down, you either participate in the process and improve it, or you sit outside of it and try and pull it apart. I think Malone's words today were the best. He's asking for people to trust Bobby, and he is a crazy one. He says it takes crazy people. I've said it before. Paul Keating used to say it. The only ones that get things done in politics are the maddies.
Oh, God, I should be in politics then.
Absolutely. That's the point, isn't it? You have to be able to do things a little bit differently. And what
Same in business.
And what we've seen in the last week is that to shake it up, and everything that these people said within one day, they've had to eat crow. They literally went the other way. Markets are down, markets are up. Markets are down, markets are up. He pulls back the tariffs, but he leaves some of them on. He literally got 10% in, and the market still went up. So you've now got the Reserve Bank saying that they're not going to cut interest rates because they don't believe the economy is going to tank. That's an extraordinary statement in 24 hours. Now, you know that she's going to have to drop them. So they will. So there will be a reduction. So therefore, for anyone following along, you're just looking at it and going, well, do I fix my interest rates at some point? And that's something for each individual person to work out. But what a wonderful thing to consider, that you might be able to get yourself set and fix your interest rates around 4% for a period of 5 years. What a fantastic opportunity to be able to do that, Nicola. Could you imagine how many cars you could sell if you could put 4% interest rates on a motor vehicle? It would just provide people with an enormous amount of space to be able to upgrade. It changes everything. But then,
the only thing I want to sell is free speech and independent media. And now I know for a fact, after Anthony Albanese's press conference in Queensland, that what he doesn't want is independent media to be sold or to be sponsored or to be supported by anyone. So I find that extremely disturbing. Jason, we're getting towards the end of the show. What would you like to say before we go? Well, why don't you say something about the fact you're on camera today?
Yeah, well, look, the camera is still working. It hasn't broken. So but for this time of the morning, I'm pretty impressed by that. I'm really enjoying, by the way, doing this particular discussion. It's a new way. I think I once had to scratch my face, maybe twice, something like that. I don't think I embarrassed myself. And I think this might be the new way forward on the video radio show of what's going on. Look, this is probably my favorite time of the year, as the just after daylight saving ends, not because it ends, because that's the sad part, but as the weather starts to cool and we actually appreciate the beautiful autumn weather, as we go into the 4-day Easter break in a few days' time, it's one of those times to just have a moment, a rest, recoup, look towards what's happened in the first quarter of the year that's already gone. The financial year is already coming up quickly, and to then mark your plans for what you want to achieve. It's important to always have something to look forward to. And one of the things I look forward to every year is that wonderful 4-day Easter break. And up here in Maitland, we have what we call Steamfest. It's a wonderful big event in the local area. It was called off about 4 years in a row during COVID for floods and COVID, etc. It's a train festival. It's a car festival. You get out there amongst thousands of people. It's one of the highlights of the Easter weekend, and I hope to see some of the local listeners out there.
Fantastic. Thank you. I mean, I think it's a good thing to try and do this video. I hope that you guys have enjoyed watching it. I hope you have a fabulous Easter weekend, and you know, you're planning what you're going to do. We're just gonna change it up on this show and see how it flies. If it makes no difference, if you guys don't share this more or talk about this more, because we've been prepared to put our old asses on camera early in the morning after just one coffee and one cigarette. If it makes no difference, then we'll just go back to voice only. But if you like the video, especially my reactions to Jason's horrifying but factual news from around the world, do let us know in the comments. Thank you so much again for tuning in to the Daily Australian. This feels weird doing this on camera, like it's an invasion of privacy. To myself, Nicola Charles, and my co-host and co-producer, Jason Olbourne, we will do this all over again, if you say you like it, on video tomorrow.